Welcome to Bro Joe Bills, and we're going to continue on this 267 teardown. And just a recap of what we did so far. We got the heads off of it. You know, we got to see how these pistons looked, and especially compared to a standard 4-inch bore, how much smaller this bore really is. Again, 3.5-inch bore, specifically for the 267, the smallest bore any small block Chevy has ever came with. And again, we compared the heads. I did a little research. These heads also came out in the 305s, and it comes with a 1.72" intake valve, and I think an 1.38" exhaust valve. I could be off a little bit there, here and there, but you know, very tiny valves. We'll pull the head apart. I'll clean it. I might even put it on the flow bench. We'll put it on the flow bench and see, you know, what it could do. But only thing different from the last video is I took the bolts off the timing cover, and now we're gonna turn the motor over, pop the pan off, and see if there's anything else different in there. Before I rolled the motor over, some of these lifters didn't want to come straight out. And instead of, you know, just yanking them out and possibly, you know, messing with the bore for the lifters, I'm just gonna pull the cam out and then push the lifters out that way. It keeps from getting anything damaged. All right. So, oil pan is off of it, timing cover is off of it. This chain has seen better days, but you know, no different than a standard small block. But I will have to pull this crank out all the way first. Well, one thing I see so far, all the piston skirts I see are actually seem to be in really good shape. So and this motor turns over pretty easily. So other than leaking oil, I think when it comes to actual ring seal, this engine's actually pretty good. But this crankshaft, back to my original thought, this crankshaft visually looks lighter. I mean, the counterweights look smaller, and that does track if you think about it, because you're swinging in a smaller piston. You need less crankshaft to, you know, balance out the weight of the pistons and the rods. So I'm going to continue to pull the oil pump and start popping rods and pistons out of it and see if I see anything else. But I mean, there's not much else left. You got the block rod and pistons. But I'm really curious to see if we can compare this crank to a 350 crank and see if there's any differences there. Alright, teardown is complete. One thing I have to say is these bores are in amazing condition. Like, the bores are really good. I need to put the dial bore in it. I still need to knock these lifters out. I do it right after I say all this. All the bearings are all in perfectly usable shape, and the only thing I saw wrong overall, this board definitely was leaking oil out of every orifice. The cam bearings. So the cam bearings are shot, but the actual bearings itself throughout the motor all look, literally, I would reuse them. So in that good of a shape. So, you know, I don't know. I'm starting to have some ideas about this. So, knock the lifters out, and I just wanted to put the two pistons on the table so you could actually visually see the difference between the two rod and piston assemblies. This is a standard, again, like as the last video, standard small block Chevy. I think No, it doesn't have the STD mark, but trust me, standard 350 4-inch bore piston. And in comparison, the 267, it is so much smaller. Matter of fact, we put them on the side like this. Again, I'm filming this one-handed. There you go. So it's easy to see why this is the least desirable performance small block Chevy. You just simply have a smaller cylinder, which requires smaller valves, which in turn makes less horsepower. The piston comes with a big old dish. These motors came with 8 3-to-1 or 8-to-1 compression, so almost no compression at all. One thing I would say is these pistons are in perfect condition for a motor that's been running. Again, it's been burning some oil at the top. You know, probably faulty PCV system if I had to guess. But all the skirts look like this. The pistons are in great shape. So whether this motor doesn't have a ton of runtime or whatnot, it's in really good shape. So the crankshaft, let's bring you to the crankshaft. All right, so both cranks here on the table. This is the 350 crank, and this is the 267 crank. And at a first glance, again, I assumed that it was a little bit lighter. I go to pick it up, it didn't feel much lighter, and unfortunately my scale out here broke. But it has, the 267 crank has one extra lightning hole, but if you look at the crank overall, they really don't look much different. This one has a casting number right there, 3932442. Wow, this one is 3932442. Apparently, they had the same casting number, so they pretty much probably came off the same line and probably just got 2 different types of balance jobs. So, you know, cast GM crank. I'll say this about cast cranks. Again, this has nothing to do with a 267. I have yet to break one, and I spun them 75, 76, 100 RPMs and beat the snot out of them. So, say what you say about certain things. I have yet to break a factory GM crank. I would say I think some of the factory GM cranks are better than some of the cheap Chinese cranks. I've seen those break, but GM cranks, I have yet to personally break one. Now, maybe I'm not pushing hard enough. You know, I'm not really, I know I never hit one with nitrous, I would say. Oh, well, no, I take that back. I did hit one with nitrous. Yeah, that I hit that motor with a 250 shot, a lot actually. Come to think of it, and it was actually in the Chevette at one point. So I've been pretty fast with pretty much garbage, you know, a factory cast crank. So I'll say that they're plenty strong for, you know, most applications. So here, enough me jabbing around. What do you guys think if we do a real, I'm talking about a real budget build, a true broke Jill build special, where we take literally the worst small block Chevy ever made and make at least 300 horsepower with it? That's more, the 267s from the factory came with 115 to 125 horsepower out of a V8. You could Dodge Neon engines came with more horsepower than that. A dual cam motor came with 150 horsepower, while even a single cam motor, 4-cylinder mind you, 2 liters, came with 135. So this is the worst small block Chevy. Now, if we could make 300 horsepower, we're more than doubling, a double and a half the output that they came with. And let's say we did it with a parts budget, because we won't count machining and skill, right? The more skills you have and develop, you shouldn't be charged for it. You learned it with your time. But at the same time, anything that we spend on parts, if we keep it between $500 or $700 and see if we can make 300 horsepower, I think that'd be a pretty cool build. If you know, let me know what you think at the end, right in the comments below, and maybe try different things. Maybe, you know, experiment a little bit. You know, I have a little bit more access to certain tools that I didn't have before, and I think it may make a fun build where we use our noodles to make horsepower, not pull out the checkbook and just buy horsepower. Because buying horsepower, anybody could buy horsepower, but building horsepower, that separates you know, your average, you know, garage mechanic to, you know, maybe you're a little bit more of an engine builder now. So let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. So as I was editing this video, I know there's gonna be an end and pretty much no one's gonna see it, but if someone does see it, at least I can refer them back to it. I want to make sure that I made it aware that I do know that there are 2 other small lot Chevys that came out that were smaller. You had the 265 and you had the 262. Notably, the 262 was even more worse than the 265, and I think the 262, even from the factory, came with a little less horsepower than the 267. But the 267 I still consider the worst small lot Chevy, specifically for the 3.5-inch bore. The 3.5-inch bore, you know, the bore size limits the valve size, which limits the cylinder head that you can put on it, which limits airflow, which limits overall power potential. Now, if we're talking about keeping these motors as close to stock as possible and whatnot, overall displacement is what matters the most, right? The bigger the motor will make more power, technically speaking. But as we strive to make the engine spin higher RPMs, make more overall horsepower in a high performance application, you want pretty much an engine that can move air, right? You want more valve area, and that starts to become the limiting factor on how much horsepower you make overall. So I still think the 267 is the worst small block Chevy, even though it didn't come with the least amount of horsepower the 262 did. But the 267 was right barely ahead of it, and like I said, overall less power potential. And one more thing I would add, I had some commenter in my last video said, why don't we put that 267 inside the Chevette? Hop it up a little bit and put it in the Chevette. And I don't hate the idea at all. Matter of fact, I have another motor that's much hotter, makes much more power than anything else I ever had put in it. And the car has a chassis somewhat done. I still have to finish the chassis, and I still had to do a bunch of different things to it. But I'm not totally against putting the 267 in it, especially if, again, at the end of this video, which is now, this is the new end of the video, I said, let's make 300 horsepower. What if I said, let's bump the budget up a few hundred more bucks and let's make 400. Let's try to make 2 horsepower per cylinder with it. 2 horsepower per cylinder is gonna be really hard with a factory cylinder head. Ambulance. It's gonna be really hard with a factory cylinder head. Extremely hard. Impossible? Technically not, but not with factory hardware. But I think and I believe, even with the factory piston and some tricks, I think we could really bump the horsepower up considerably, even with the factory cylinder heads. Obviously with port work and maybe some tricks here and there. And then forget the arbitrary horsepower number. Let's see if we can get the Chevette to run 10s with a 267. I think that would be pretty cool, and it's not gonna cost me really all that much money, and it'll be a test. More or less the whole reason why I'm doing any of this is to just test myself. So, yeah, let me know what you think. If it's something that some of y'all will like to watch, let's do it. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell.